Tonight, there could be light at the end of the tunnel after President William Ruto convened a meeting of the EAC member states as well as the SADC head of, the chairman of SADC. Tonight, we give you an in-depth coverage of what exactly to perhaps expect and what the renewed conflict in the DRC could portend for the AUC race, even as we entered February, the election month, that will see all eyes in Addis Ababa for the race of the new AUC chairperson. This and much more will be coming your way right here on TV47. Good evening and a very warm welcome to the Daily Report. My name is George Maringa. On sign language interpretation is Rhoda Nyamai. Tonight we also look at a state of the nation with a perspective from the young people. Kasmil Makaure as well as Morara Kebaso will be joining us tonight. Do stand by for that and much more tonight, including tonight, 5 chiefs reportedly abducted in Mandera by suspected Al-Shabaab gunmen while traveling from Wargadood to Elwak town. Also tonight, tribunal investigating Justice Mohammed Noor Kulo dismisses all allegations of gross misconduct against him. The tribunal recommended reinstatement of the judge to the Environment and Land Court. Plus, university's students protest in Nairobi over delays in the disbursement of Higher Education Loans Board funds. And 5 suspects arrested over murder of Molo activist Richard Otieno detained for 21 days. (22047) is our SMS line. You can find us on the socials at TV47 News KE at George Maringa _ use the hashtag Daily Report. As I mentioned, tonight we also look at the state of the nation from the young perspective, from the youth. As I told you, we are hosting Morara Kebaso as well as Kasmil Makare, as you can see right there on your screens, and we're having an interesting conversation on how the past has been, where we are, and perhaps where we will be intending to be as a country from their lenses. In fact, they have said that Ruto must go a section of young people. But after he goes, if at all he does, who should take up that mantle? These two gentlemen will be having that conversation with us right here tonight on TV47 as we look at other stories making headlines. And we begin here in Kenya, where 5 chiefs have reportedly been kidnapped in Mandera County. Security agencies in the county have confirmed the incident, saying that they were ambushed and kidnapped this morning by suspected Al-Shabaab terrorists in Elwak, Mandera South. Mandera South Deputy County Commissioner Tobias Otunga reported that the attackers took the chief from Elwak town and fled to Somalia. Local leaders have called on the government to beef up security in the region, as Joash Onsare now reports.
This was the situation in Elwak, Mandera South. Hours, Mandera local administrators were kidnapped. 5 chiefs were ambushed and kidnapped by suspected Al-Shabaab terrorists in Elwak, Mandera County. The chiefs were to meet in the area to plan out to cover planned visit by President William Ruto this week. Mandera South Deputy County Commissioner Tobias Otunga confirmed the incident and said the administrators were traveling from Wargadood to Elwak town for duty.
And then they stopped the car. We were told that they forcibly took control of the car and managed to speed off with all the occupants.
DCC Otunga noted that a major operation was mounted after the incident, in which the attackers who are waiting are said to have fled to Somalia. Elwak is near the Kenya-Somali border.
We have put together a multi-agency surveillance patrol team led by the KDF, and right now that operation is underway.
Local leaders led by Mandera Governor Mohamed Adan Khalif have called on the security agencies to beef up security in the region that has been on the radar of Al-Shabaab militia. The sentiments that were echoed by Mandera South legislator Abdul Ibrahim.
Ni jambo la kuhuzunisha kwamba wakati kama huu ambao tunajitayarisha kumkaribisha rais katika kaunti, jambo la insecurity kama hili linafanyika.
President Ruto is expected to tour the northern region this week, and this has prompted security operations as the president is expected to chair a series of meetings with local leaders and also hold a cabinet meeting in Garissa County. Joash Onsare, TV47.
Thank you, Joash. A 7-member tribunal has cleared Environment and Land Court Judge Mohamed Noor Kolo, dismissing all allegations leveled against him, recommending to President Dr. William Ruto to reinstate the judge. The tribunal found that most of the allegations were not proved. Moige William reports.
Months of probing, Court of Appeal Judge Patrick Kiage-chaired tribunal on Monday handed over its report to President William Ruto, clearing the Environment and Land Court Judge Mohamed Noor Kolo, dismissing all the allegations leveled against him.
We therefore, Your Excellency, recommend that Your Excellency do reinstate the Honorable Judge to the office of Judge of the Environment and Land Court.
The tribunal in its report submitted to the president that most of the allegations were not proved and that some of the claims did not amount to gross misconduct or a breach of judicial code of conduct.
We find that the judge's conduct was not in breach of the Judicial Service Act Code of Conduct and Ethics Regulations 2020 and did not amount to gross misconduct contrary to Article 168(1)(b) and (e) of the Constitution.
The Kiage-led tribunal since March 2024 was probing allegations of delay in delivery of rulings and judgments, failure to give reasons for delay in delivery of rulings and judgments, delivery of rulings and judgments without issuing notices, incompetence, among others.
Allegation number 8 was not proved. The delay was explained and lack of ability and fitness, hence incompetence, was not established.
Receiving the report at State House Nairobi, President Ruto highlighted that the just concluded exercise confirms the balance of the law in accordance with the Constitution.
Each and every one of us has a duty to ensure that we do with a lot of integrity that which is required of us by the law.
The tribunal's report come amid a mounting pressure for the Judicial Service Commission to act on allegations of corruption in the judiciary, with echoes to have the Chief Justice hounded out of office getting louder. Moige William, TV47.
Let's look at your payslips, because following an outcry from public and opposition leaders over the high cost of living in the country, Kenya Kwanza government now says payslips for Kenyans have been enhanced in an effort to resolve the current economic crisis. Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi says the payment of pending bills totaling 206 billion shillings has been approved by the Pending Bills Committee. Mike Kagwongo reports.
The government has raised concerns over the numbers suppliers presented to the public for compensation, following reports that nearly half of the verified pending bills are not genuine. The cabinet approved the creation of a special committee to examine the claims after the National Treasury reported that outstanding debts amounted to 663 billion shillings as of June 2022.
The pending bills, and this is not the first time we have subjected pending bills in this country to a committee. We have always created committees.
According to Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi, the committee has confirmed that 474 billion shillings in invoices have been vetted thus far, with only 206 billion shillings in claims being genuine.
They have approved for payment 206 million worth of pending billion worth of pending bills. I have since, together with my team, analyzed that data.
He emphasized that the majority of the money owing is to small and medium-sized businesses, SMEs, who have provided the government with goods and services for sums under 10 million shillings.
Wasipolipwa deni zao wanakuwa na shida. Kwa hivyo sisi kama serikali tutaangalia vile tunaweza lipa pesa ya MSMEs.
Mbadi argued that the government's tax policies, particularly for middle-class taxpayers, are not as oppressive as critics claim.
We have not reached where we want to be, but we are making deliberate efforts. Tunajaribu sana. Tumeweka mikakati, ninajaribu. And I'm being transparent and open.
Kenyans, the vast majority of Kenyans, pay tax or comply voluntarily. Sio lazima ati hata uwakumbushe.
Corruption, watu wameibia Kenya, hadi Kenya hakuna kitu ya kuibiwa. Ukienda kwa magazetini last week, tuliona Kena, Kura na Kera, they are the biggest institutions zenye zimelead kwa corruption kwa hii country.
Mbadi's comments coincide with a growing public dissatisfaction with the rising cost of living and the rise in salary deductions. Mike Kagwango, TV47, Nairobi.
Now, while CS Mbadi was addressing the Kamkunji at Jivanji Gardens, a section of university students staged protests today decrying the prolonged wait for the disbursement of the funds by the Higher Education Loans Board. The students had planned to storm the HELB offices at Anniversary Towers, saying that many have been left struggling to cover their academic expenses. They have issued the government an ultimatum of until Friday to address the mass delays, failure to which they will hit the streets once again. Sheila Chelangat reports.
Monday morning, and students from the University of Nairobi put away their books and headed for the streets, frustrated by the delayed Higher Education Loans Board disbursement. They marched towards Anniversary Towers, which hosts the offices to the Higher Education Loans Board, criticizing the board over the delays which they say have left many struggling to cover their academic and personal expenses. The protest disrupted traffic activities, forcing the police to lob tear gas canisters to disperse the rioting students. Similar scenes played out along Thika Road, where Kenyatta University students also took to the streets over the issue.
When we started school, we were around 800 students, and apparently the number has gone down by a large percentage. We are right now, when we sit for the exams, right now we were about 500 students. So you see, that is really calling for an attention.
HELB, however, says it has disbursed the funds to first and second year students using the old model, as it awaits a decision on the appeal against the High Court suspension of the new funding model.
Close to 10 students whom I was with on the streets received the help while we were on the streets. But do we have to protest to receive our funds? Can they just do their job? Because like personally, we don't like coming on the streets.
Last year, the High Court declared the new education funding model illegal and unconstitutional, noting its failure to involve public participation.
The other day, State House has been renovated and it's costed around 10 billion shillings. Yeah, sure. If they can just divert half of that money to the pockets of the comrades, comrades will be happy. There's no way comrades will be in the streets. Comrades, power! Wow.
The students now have given an ultimatum of Friday for the help to be disbursed to all students, failure to which they vow they will return to the streets. Sheila Chelangat for TV47.
Let's bring you up to speed with what's happening in Shinyalu, Kakamega County, where we are being informed that there is a rescue ongoing following 12 gold miners who were trapped in a gold mine. And there is an appeal for the emergency teams on the ground to rush to Imashilifu village in Musano area at Isuka South, Kakamega, to rescue over the 12 gold miners who are being reported to be trapped in a gold mine. At this hour, hour, the information is coming from Shinyalu OCPD, Daniel Makumbu, who says 8 have been rescued so far, 12 are still trapped, and there is more that will follow up from our reporter Violet Auma, who is following up on the matter. And just to inform you, over 20 gold miners were trapped, 8 have been recovered or found, rescued so far, 12 are still trapped, and we will be following and waiting for more updates from our very own Violet Auma, who is following on that report. Away from that, more university staff will receive their long-awaited arrears totaling to 500 million Kenya shillings within the next 3 days. The new management of the institution, led by the council, Noah Midamba, has confirmed. Speaking after meeting the staff, the council assured them that they would receive their salaries in accordance with the recently signed return-to-work formula. The new leadership has promised to restore the dignity of the institution.
Our focus is to start with the staff welfare. We want to address basic things that need to happen, and then we are going to look at all other issues step by step. But we must make sure that the whole constituency, which means the staff, the students, the alumni, the community, is supporting what we are doing. Otherwise, it will not work.
We have the capacity. But more importantly, we are not starting with the government. We are starting with building confidence. You know, you cannot go to government and ask for students if your own students don't believe in you. We want to start by restoring confidence. We want to have a community of more university that believes in more university. Because it is from that point that the students will speak positively, the staff will speak positively, and it will be easier for us to actually get government to perhaps work on a situation where we can get more students.
The Ministry of Education has announced agreements with other African nations to offer scholarships to students from those countries. Education Cabinet Secretary Julius Migos Ogamba confirmed that Kenya has already entered into a memorandum of understanding with Guinea-Bissau and Comoros. Speaking during an inspection tour of an ongoing student accommodation project at Maseno University in Kisumu County, the CS emphasized the government's commitment to expanding access to higher education. The 700 million project is expected to improve students' living conditions and enhance the institution's learning environment.
To check the progress of that construction because we want to see how that program can be rolled out among other universities that have capacity to do so, so that at least we have enough hostels to host from first years when they report, and because we also want to start admitting students from other countries into our universities, especially our African neighbors, because of the number and nature of the programs that we are running in the country. The hostels to be able to accommodate these students from outside the country are critical, and so we are inspecting those facilities in order to ensure that when we work with other countries, and this began by our signing an MOU with Guinea-Bissau and the Comoros, where we are going to give their citizen students scholarships to 100 students each, and then we'll identify which institutions these students would go.
Now, a Nakuru Law Court has allowed 21 days to the prosecution and the Directorate of Criminal Investigations to investigate further on the murder case of Molo activist Richard Otieno, alias Molo President. This comes hours after the Directorate of Criminal Investigations arrested 5 suspects, as Chichi Josephine now tells us from Nakuru County.
Hours after the Directorate of Criminal Investigation arrested 5 suspects in connection with the murder of Molo activist Richard Otieno, alias Molo President, the 5 were arraigned in court on Monday.
Before you, Your Honor, is an application.
Appearing before Senior Principal Magistrate Kipkirui Kibelion at the Nakuru Law Court, the 5, Geoffrey Mavado, John Degwa, Jorem Gongasura, Clinton Simantu, alias Miruri, and Peter Mwaneki, alias Pinches, agreed to the submissions by the prosecutor.
Geoffrey? Yes, Your Honor. You have no objection.
The prosecution filed an application seeking more time to investigate the matter, a plea that the court granted by allowing them 21 days to enable conclusion of the investigations.
Your Honor, we are seeking for 30 days to enable us conclude the investigations into this matter. The investigations will involve collection of Safaricom data. We are yet to record statements of crucial witnesses. Our post-mortem is also yet to be conducted, or it has been conducted. We are awaiting samples that were taken to the government chemist analyst.
Leave is hereby granted to the applicant to detain the respondents herein for a period of 21 days to enable the conclusion of the investigation.
In a statement on Monday, DCI revealed that 3 of the 5 suspects were the actual perpetrators of the crime, who had previously been arrested for assaulting Richard, while 2 of them were boda riders who ferried them to and from the crime scene. Meanwhile, the suspects will remain in custody at the Kaptembo police station, pending investigations.
The primary station for the respondents' detention shall be at Kaptembo police station, and leave is granted to the applicant to transfer the suspect to any other station as may be necessary, but this is limited to when need arises.
The case will be mentioned on 24th of February 2025.
The matter shall be mentioned for further directions before this court on the 24th of February 2025.
Chichi Josephine, TV47, Nakuru.
Samuel.
Thank you, Chichi. A clinical officer at Pandya Private Hospital in Mombasa has been arraigned in a Mombasa court over allegations of raping his patient during a dialysis treatment in the early hours of January 31st this year. As our Mombasa County reporter Kinto Afula reports, human rights organizations have strongly condemned the incident and are now calling for swift justice for the alleged victim and actions against the hospital. Take a look.
Dias Wabwile appeared before Mombasa Magistrate Alex Ithuku, facing charges of sexually assaulting his patient and indecently touching her private parts without consent while she was receiving treatment for kidney-related complications.
On the 31st day of January.
However, Wabwile denied all charges and pleaded with the court to grant him bail despite the prosecution's request to have him remanded. Magistrate Alex Ithuku granted him a bail of 500,000 with a surety of similar amount. The case is set for a pre-trial on February 17th, 2025.
And considering the law and circumstances of the case, I will admit the accused person to a bond of Kenya shillings 500,000 with one surety of similar amount.
The Federation of Women Lawyers FIDA has condemned the incident and accused the management of Pandya Hospital of failing to take action despite multiple reports from the alleged victim. They are now calling on law enforcement agencies to expedite investigation and ensure strict action is taken against both the hospital and the accused.
We will file a civil suit against Pandya Memorial Hospital, Mombasa, and seek compensation for the survivor for gross negligence and failure to protect her.
She might be getting a lot of intimidations and threats, so we shall also be working closely to ensure that her security is guaranteed.
Kinto Wafula, TV47, Mombasa.
Now, as the Ministry of Gender Action prepares for the International Day for Zero Tolerance for Female Genital Mutilation to be held this week, the government has also incorporated the findings of the Women Rights Initiative to the Kenya National Care Policy to address the issue of unpaid domestic and care work predominantly performed by women and girls. Anastasia Mukabi with more details.
Over 4 million women and girls in Kenya have gone through the cut. To combat this, the anti-FGM board held a meeting to discuss the progress made so far, but also acknowledging the significant challenges that remain.
However, despite these advances,
we do recognize that the challenge is still there. It still remains. The battle against FGM has not been won as yet.
Our greatest challenge is the fact that it's now very secretive, and that's why we have changed our tactic to say every mother should protect their daughter from FGM, because it is only the mother who is like the contact of the girl.
Discussing the critical role of education in changing attitudes and challenging cultural norms that perpetuate FGM, a section of the survivors highlighted their challenges, pointing out that they not only need psychological help, but also called on the government to include the reconstruction of female genitals in SHA, as it is very expensive.
I didn't want any other girl or woman to go through this. We are not blaming anyone for what we went through, or I personally went through, but I have a voice to be able to talk about these highly stigmatized female genital mutilation, highly stigmatized, spoken in closed doors, done in secrecy, but the outcome are felt by the larger community.
In order to address the long-standing problem of unpaid domestic and care work that is primarily done by women and girls, the State Department of Gender and Affirmative Action has attempted to integrate the results of the Women Rise program into the Kenya National Care Policy.
Women spend an additional about 3.5 hours more as compared to men in a day doing additional work, and this includes domestic work. It includes work that women carry home from formal employment, and for that we ended up coming up with the care policy. Now this policy is currently in cabinet, and beyond the policy, once cabinet, it's awaiting approval.
Anastasia Mkabi, TV47, Nairobi.
Thank you, Anastasia. Tonight, tensions in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo have sparked urgent diplomatic action as leaders from across the African continent come together to address one of the region's most pressing conflicts. This weekend, a joint summit of the Southern African Development Community SADC and the East African Community EAC will take place in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. We'll be having that conversation regarding that upcoming summit that has been convened by President William Ruto. My guest, Dismas Mukua, is already here in studio, as well as Hesbon Owila, who will be joining us to discuss that and, of course, the potential ramifications that this conflict and its resolution has in the region, noting that the African Union will be heading to the polls. The heads of state will be heading to the election to elect a new AUC chairman. That we've seen Kenya's candidate Raila Odinga facing off the Djibouti candidate Mahmoud Yusuf, as well as Madagascar's Richard Randramandrato. That conversation will be coming your way shortly, as well as that report on the summit that is expected to take place this weekend. Kenya National Clinical Officers have continued to criticize the government over the implementation of Social Health Authority SHA, which they claim to have failed. The clinical officers have accused a SHA management team of being at the center stage of sabotaging the whole system. They have called on President Ruto to disband SHA management team and a fresh team be appointed to steer the implementation of SHA across the country.
Solidarity forever. We are really concerned that the agreement between SHA and our teams, that is the COC and the Ministry of Health, is not bearing any fruit. We are really concerned that up to now our members are not able to do pre-authorization for SHA.
Is that the problem with the Social Health Authority is the secretariat, the management of the Social Health Authority. It's not the law, it's not the other things, it is the management. And that is why we continue to call for the disbandment of the management of Social Health Authority, and we bring in Kenyans.
Deliberately, the government have chosen to work with a system that continues systematically to fail. Every time on Friday, Thursday, there is several facilities that you cannot seek services. And those are deliberate issues, and issues which are administrative and need to be sorted and not to be repeated.
Indeed, Milka Mora, the woman who made headlines after a local televangelist embarrassed her while she sought help for rent, is now set for a fresh start. Mora will be among the beneficiaries of the Mukuru Affordable Housing Project, and President William Ruto officially hands over the affordable housing units in Mukuru in 2 months. What started as a moment of public humiliation has turned into a blessing in disguise. Just weeks ago, Mora's rented single room was locked over arrears. Through the intervention of Kenyan Police Officer Sami Ondimungari, well-wishers came together raising funds not just to reopen her home but to transform her life.
Hatika time yenye Pastor Nganga alinirushanisha, time yenye nilikuwa namweleza shida zangu, nikaumika kwa moyo, but nikajipea tu moyo, nikajua Mungu atanitetea kwa kila hali na hiyo shida yenye nilikuwa nimepitia.
Nyumba ilikuwa imefungwa kwa sababu gani?
Nilikuwa ninadaiwa miezi 2.
Na landlord? Alifunga nyumbani?
Alifunga, aliniambia nitoke nje, ya kufunga na kufuli. Alichomelea mlango.
Normally unalipa pesa ngapi nyumba?
Nalipa kwa mwezi 4K.
Sports News brought to you by Maybet.
Let's get sporty. Defending Premier League champions Gor Mahia have appointed Croatian tactician Sinisa Mihic to lead the Green Army for the remainder of the 2025 season. Mihic, who has a vast managerial experience, including working in Africa as an assistant manager for Sudanese club Al Merrikh and also Libyan side Al Nasser, will be up for a tough first assignment when he charges take on league leaders Tusker FC in what promises to be an enticing encounter. Kogalo currently sits in third place with a total tally of 31 points, 6 points behind the leaders, and also with a game in hand. The Croatian will be deputized by Zedekia Zico Otieno, who has been serving as interim head coach since the dismissal of Brazilian coach Leonardo Neiva in November last year.
This is something beautiful. I'm so proud, grateful for that. And I know it from before, yes, that not so many clubs in Africa has that reputation. So Gor Mahia is one of that. And I'm very happy to join the Green Army.
The aim of Gor Mahia since inception is to win leagues and also to develop players. Sinisha Miha on this, and I'm so impressed that he knows really what we want. So what we expect is, at the moment we are third in the log. We don't want to be there. In a few days' time, we want to be at the top. And you know, when we get to the top, it's very difficult to dislodge us from there. That is my expectation.
Still keeping tabs on the record, Kenyan champions now, just days after Tanzania's Singida Black Stars demanded a 5 million Kenya shillings refund over Rooney Onyango's failed transfer. Gor Mahia treasurer Dolphina Othiambo has denied the funds ever went through the club's official account. This comes after Singida Black Stars threatened to escalate the matter to FIFA if the money is not repaid within 14 days. However, that was not all, as Dolphina Othiambo further went on to throw her hat in the ring for the chairmanship, insisting Ambrose Rachier's tenure is over. But with Rachier keen on holding on to power, all roads will now lead to the ballot box for a showdown that will shape Kogalo's future.
Should not derail our pursuit for the league, and that everything else should be conducted in a responsible manner and in a peaceful manner.
I am also vying. And I'm not just vying, I'm vying for the chairperson's seat. So all the contenders, they should feel free to join me in the ballot. I'm happy you're saying that the chairman is saying he's going to hold elections. Very good. But remember, the registrar that he's going to see tomorrow also wrote 2 letters to his office, specifically mentioning him and saying that he is not eligible to vie. So I don't know how we are planning to handle that, because his terms, like I said, are over. But nevertheless, even if he decides to vie, there's no problem. Let's meet at the ballot.
The countdown to the AUC elections is starting, and to have that conversation will be Dismas Mukwe and Hezbon Owila, as well as later on Kasmil Makaure and Morara Kebaso on State of the Nation. Do stay with us. We're back in a few minutes.
Are you ready to elevate your business game?
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
Kama wewe ni mfanyabiashara, huwezi kaa bure, unajipanga taratibu vile inavyofaa.
Join us each week as we dive into the stories of the world's most driven entrepreneurs.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
The Grind, where business meets brilliance. Tune in every Monday at 7:30 p.m. because your business deserves the best.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in? I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do,
the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching the Daily Report. Let's now delve into the AUC conversation, where just this week, President William Ruto and tonight, the tensions in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, have sparked urgent diplomatic action as leaders from across the African continent come together to address one of the region's most pressing conflicts. This weekend, a joint summit of the Southern African Development Community SADC and the East African Community EAC will take place in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. After a dramatic turn of events in an extraordinary summit that saw President Felix Tshisekedi of the DRC skip the meeting and Paul Kagame of Rwanda throw jibes at South Africa and DRC, there seems to be some white smoke at the top echelons of the region. The summit, scheduled for this Friday and Saturday, will bring together leaders from both SADC and EAC member states. It follows a key agreement between President William Ruto of Kenya, the current chair of the EAC, and President Emerson Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe, chairman of SADC. President Ruto confirmed that Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan will graciously host the summit in Dar es Salaam, offering a crucial platform for dialogue. The goal? To find common ground and an effective strategy to bring lasting peace to Eastern DRC. In a statement on Monday, President Ruto expressed optimism about the summit's potential, saying that it would pave the way for a coordinated regional effort to tackle the security crisis. Among the leaders expected to attend are President Felix Tshisekedi of the DRC, President Paul Kagame of Rwanda, and President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni and Somalia's Hassan Sheikh Mohamud have also confirmed their participation. Despite efforts by the United Nations and other international bodies, the Eastern DRC remains a hotspot for violence. Armed groups, some with ties to foreign governments, continue to wreak havoc. The humanitarian toll is devastating, with millions of people displaced and in need of urgent assistance. With this summit, regional leaders hope to address the underlying causes of the violence, the fight for resources, ethnic tensions, and the role of external actors. It's a delicate issue, but one that requires immediate unified action. The summit will be preceded by a ministerial meeting on Friday, where key foreign ministers and diplomats will lay the groundwork for the heads of state. On Saturday, the leaders will take to the table for the summit itself, where they will discuss potential peacekeeping measures, diplomatic solutions, and strategies to de-escalate the situation. While much remains uncertain, there's hope that this summit could serve as a turning point in the region's efforts to bring peace to the DRC. As this extraordinary summit unfolds, all eyes will be on Dar es Salaam. Will these leaders be able to create a path forward for peace, or will the conflict continue to overshadow the region? George Maringa, TV47, Nairobi. Indeed, that story sets the pace, the precedence for the conversation tonight on the state of the nation, as we address and begin with that issue of EAC and matters SADC and the DRC. Joining me on set is Dismas Mukua. He's a political risk analyst. Thank you, Dismas. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks.
Also joining us, is it now Prof?
Doctor.
Coming soon. I'm elevating you. Dr. Hezbollah Wheeler. He is also a political analyst and governance expert, as well as
Morara Kebaso.
Morara Kebaso. Tonight, what name do you give you? What title?
A political activist is just fine.
Okay.
I've gotten used to it.
Absolutely. And I noticed you arrived quite heavily tonight.
Yes.
That's how you roll?
Yes.
Okay. We'll be telling the viewers how easy that you do that. But I'll begin with you, Dismas. A lot is happening. Mnangagwa is now in the picture. He's the SADC chairperson. And of course, the Rwanda's President Paul Kagame hit at South Africa over the issues in DRC. Some have argued this is a deflation of the issue, or rather a diversion of this specific issue. Let's begin with the DRC itself. Why is it that there seems to be a mismanagement, or why is it running out of control?
Well, I'm not sure that it's running out of control, but it raises fundamental concerns. And the Eastern DRC issue has been around for decades, more than 50 years ago. And as the African leaders have said, it doesn't require a military solution, but rather it requires a political solution. And we have to take note of this key development, that there's going to be a summit between EAC and SADC. So, first of all, the EAC had a meeting under the chairmanship of President Ruto and agreed to have a joint meeting with SADC. And President Mnangagwa and his colleagues accepted that this would be a prudent idea. But one may ask, why is there a need for a joint summit of the regional leaders? And the answer is very simple, as it is basic. That we need a joint session so that there is no forum shopping. And President Tshisekedi has been accused of jumping a number of meetings when he senses that the outcome may not be sensitive to his needs, or it may not align to his interest. And you recall that is the reason why the East African Standby Force did not make very good progress in DRC, because he wanted the force to dance to his drum beats. But this time round, for this particular session, the two presidents now will be in one room and everybody will present their issues. But it's not as if that the regional presidents don't understand, because all of them have interacted with the critical variables in DRC for the last 50 years. And everybody, even if you speak to, a young man from Amososho, he will tell you that there's no need for a military solution, because in fact, there's no military solution. It's supposed to be a political solution. And as they've been saying, that in the interest of Pan-Africanism, then the two leaders, the key leaders, that is President Kagame and Tshisekedi, must ask themselves that what are the issues raised by M23 and who actually needs to talk to M23. Scholars and practitioners are agreed that for this issue to come to an end, President Tshisekedi must speak to M23. There are no two ways. If you want to use an example which is not sensitive, you've got Maasais in Kenya and you've got Maasais in Tanzania. So you cannot wake up one day, you tell all the Maasais in Kenya, move back to Tanzania, or the ones in Tanzania move back to Nairobi, and you expect them to give you red roses, because one group will be disenfranchised, and the one which is disenfranchised will automatically raise their issues. And as we realize, war becomes very emotional. So when you're kicking somebody from his motherland, you are declaring them stateless, then you can be sure even a young man who has barely turned 14 will pick arms and rise.
Dr. I've seen you simmering and, listening to what Dismas is speaking about. But what do you make of this whole back and forth? And we will get to AUC matters in a short while. But the EAC itself and how this conflict has embroiled. Kenya sent troops. The mission ended. This M23 situation has been there, of course, for a while. It's not the first time, but this renewed conflict has potential ramifications to the rest of the region. Could you speak to what perhaps the leaders need to just dust off and get to the real issues instead of just handling the top layer, as it were?
Yeah, I think to a large extent, I want to agree with Dismas that bringing political leaders together from SADC and EAC is very critical. And it's critical for the same reason that if you look for solutions in isolation, then you're likely to build an opportunity for forum shopping, where presidents will start looking for allies and then build their case and run away from the critical issue. And the critical issue is basically why is there conflict? And why is M23 up in arms? So unless we address those critical issues, the issues of politics of self-interest, where leadership wants to attend to issues of a select group of citizens in a particular country at the expense of other citizens who they brand as citizens belonging to another country, simply because of the geographical demarcation of African states, which makes one, despite the linguistic homogeneity, to be in one particular country and other speakers of the same language in another country. Yeah. And from where I see it, I think President Kagame has raised very critical issues. I think we've seen a history of very critical pathways to finding a solution from both President Tshisekedi and other presidents who've been there in terms of trying to find a solution, including President Uhuru Kenyatta. And where we have reached, it's not a question of, who is right and who is wrong. It's a question of why is it that there is conflict? Why is it that there's a group of people in DRC called the M23 who are up in arms? Is it possible for all these leaders to come with clean hands on the table, facilitated by leaders who have nothing but the interest of Africa as a whole and security of this region, to find a common solution, a solution that would ensure that if you're a citizen of a country, you're treated as such, irrespective of the language that you speak, irrespective of the community that exists in the other side.
If I may buttress his points,
okay.
These artificial boundaries we're talking about were, I understand there was a conference in Berlin a long time ago where white men came with a piece of paper and divided, this shall be Kenya, this shall be Uganda. And that is not long ago, Kenya's vice president was called Moody Awori, while his brother was an ICT minister in Uganda. And these people come from the same family, but they were simply divided by an artificial boundary. And we shouldn't allow Africans ourselves to let those artificial boundaries create unnecessary animosities and tensions.
We will come to you. Just give a minute, Morara. Husband, is it possible, you've raised pertinent questions and I want perhaps to buttress on them. Is it possible for these African leaders to come with these clean hands to the table? How dirty are they?
Well, I don't think they're dirty. I think it's just a question of what interests do they have? And are those interests converging at a space where it is a common African citizen who benefits? And I think it's a question of give and take, that at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be what the leaders get out of these processes. It doesn't have to be what leaders don't get out of this process. It has to be about the people. And I think the history of DRC, for historians, tells you of a very checkered country. A country that is bedeviled by conflict simply because of the wealth that it has. And to a large extent, it's not just a question of these African leaders coming with clean hands. It's a question of these African leaders disentangling themselves from, the Western influence and specifically focusing more on solutions in the global South by the global South. So, I mean, it might look a bit intricate in the sense that individual interests might look like African presidents' interests, but I think there's an overarching influence that they must come clean and say, I'm coming and I'm representing my people, and it is my people and my people only, nothing else.
Nothing else.
So unless we get into that space where we are looking for solutions that would address the plight of the people without reference to any other outside influence, I think those hands, will not be that clean.
Morara, you spoke to the young people in the DRC on your socials, and you spoke about interests. Your tweet was quite controversial in some quarters.
Yes.
Could you perhaps speak to how, as young people, with the agitation that was there, is there a risk of misunderstanding and perhaps giving an opportunity for proliferation of this leaderless movement that came in to what the older generations have argued? We risk going the direction of other countries.
Probably it is important for our viewers tonight to understand just how complex the situation in DRC is, both politically and economically. Because, DRC is a very expansive country. The distance between Goma and Kinshasa is about 2,600 kilometers. So it might actually be closer to come to Nairobi than to go to Kinshasa when you are in Goma. Now, personally, as you've correctly put it, my tweet was somehow controversial to people who found it controversial. But to me, I believe that is a correct position of how things should be. M23 has a mission, and that mission is to protect ethnic Tutsis who are in Goma, that is in Kivu of the DRC. They have a right to protect their own people from being extinct and from being killed. And if you look at the Angolan deal that was made, it speaks about the ethnic Tutsis that are in Congo, that they should be given citizenship, and that even the M23 was supposed to be absorbed into the army In fact, it's not the first time that the M23 has occupied Goma. They occupied it before, but they withdrew from Goma because of that deal. So I believe what is going to make that issue settle is if the M23 is going to be given assurance that the ethnic Tutsis who are in the Democratic Republic of Congo are going to be given citizenship, they are going to be recognized, they are going to be given their right to human rights, and also the M23 is going to be integrated into the army. I do agree with President Kagame on some parts, because President Kagame is justified to be afraid of what is going on in Congo and to participate in that conflict. Many people have brought issues about his participation, but if I was President Kagame, I would definitely participate, because there is an active belligerent force called the FDLR, for the Democratic Liberation of Rwanda, whose intention is actually to overthrow the president of Rwanda and the government of Rwanda. So when you know that there is a belligerent force in a nearby country that is actually being supported by the military of that country to overthrow a legitimately established government here, then you do not expect President Kagame to sit on his hands. So from where I see it, I see that the external forces are the ones that have made the resolution of issues in DRC Congo to be more difficult, because DRC Congo has become like a woman who is heartbroken, and every man she's confiding in wants to sleep with her. So, you know, the DRC Congo government comes and confides in President Ruto. President Ruto takes armed forces into DRC, not for the intention of bringing peace, but also getting a piece of the cake of the minerals. We've had the UN forces in Congo since 1999, and they've achieved absolutely nothing. In fact, recently, I was watching DW, and a vehicle belonging to the United Nations fell. It was involved in an accident, and it overturned, and inside the vehicle were minerals, meaning even people from the United Nations are actually participating in exploitation and extraction of minerals from the DRC. So if external forces were to stay out of this, I believe the people of DRC and even the youth who are there can be able to solve the problem themselves.
Indeed, but interesting perspectives. I see Hezbon is angling to correct you and to point out, or do you want to quickly react to that?
Yeah, I mean, to a large extent, I think they are, without dropping names or, you know, making wild allegations, if there is any prospecting, there is any extraction of minerals in any country in Africa, it should benefit Africans. And I think for as long as, you know, people in DRC are wallowing in poverty and they see lots and lots of minerals getting out of their country, they'll have a problem with that. And that will never end. Solutions to, you know, very basic problems of just fending and providing for your people becomes an opportunity for vested interests to come in and take advantage. And just like I said, I mean, most of these things can be resolved when you dissuade any political leader from, you know, forum shopping, for looking for people to do their bidding. And I think that's the direction that we're taking. And you know, the stance that has been taken by 3 presidents is very important in this case. That when you're in conflict, it is important that you understand that people are taking stands on things that they believe in. So you have President Cyril Ramaphosa, you have President Paul Kagame, and then you have the DRC president. I think they've come out clean with their positions. You know, President Kagame, with whatever he has said, there are people who agree with him, there are people who don't agree with him. But from where he's coming from, at least there is a bone of contention to address the issues that he's raising. President Ramaphosa, the same. And then the interest that President Tshisekedi has is to ensure that there's a country with minerals that serves the people in that country. When these 3 come together, I think most of those fears that my colleague here is raising can easily be addressed. And anyone who is coming with a hand that is not clean would actually remain with soiled hands, and the whole world would see that if they're not bringing solutions.
Indeed. Let's take a break. Dismas will come with you. We need to take a commercial break. When we come back, we have more on this and the state of the nation. Please do stay with us.
ready to elevate your business game.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
Kama wewe ni mfanyabiashara, huwezi kaa bure, unajipanga taratibu vile inavyofaa.
Join us each week as we dive into the stories of the world's most driven entrepreneurs.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
The Grind, where business meets brilliance. Tune in every Monday at 7:30 p.m. because your business deserves the best.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in? I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm, which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism, how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora. Kutoka kwa ushindi mkubwa hadi masomo magumu.
Wakati wetu kwamba wasichana si wa kusoma, ni wazazi wakuwa watajiri.
Tunashughulikia yote.
I wish I were a better investor.
My parents taught me how to look for things for myself.
Tazama Mfahamu Kiongozi, ambapo kila kipindi kimejaa maarifa, mikakati na hadithi za kukuza azma yako.
For me to succeed, I have to fight.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30.
Indeed, the discussion has just gotten wider, and just to inform you is that we're now joined by four gentlemen actually on this matter to discuss state of the nation. I'm joined by Dismas Mokwa. Let me reintroduce him, as well as Hezbon Owila, and then Kasmil Makaure. Yes. And Morara Kebaso. Gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
An interesting mix. I'm glad you've all been acquainted with each other. Welcome, Kasmil. We have been waiting for you. But before we come to gentlemen, let me wind up with Dismas about the whole conflict and AUC, or rather the conflict in the DRC to be specific. Do you think there is an end in sight?
Obviously, there's an end in sight, and the leaders who carry the biggest responsibility, number one is President Tshisekedi, because this conflict is happening in his soil, and he was given leadership in that country, so he must accept and offer solutions so that all citizens in that part of the world, they feel like they're at home. We gave the examples of the Maasais in Kenya and Maasais in Tanzania, and the Samias in Kenya and Samias in Uganda. So if any section feels disenfranchised, then they've got a legitimate reason to raise their voices for their issues to be heard. And the fact that the request by President Ruto has been accepted by the regional leaders to have a joint session, it means that these leaders will now come in face-to-face conversations in one room, and every leader is going to table their issues. And as Professor Wheeler has elaborately indicated, it's all about M23 and these group of people who feel that they're being kicked out of their motherland. I come from a place called Mosocho. I'm a Kisii, I'm Kenyan. So if for some reason you tell me that I'm not Kisii and you tell me to go to Tanzania and I've been Kisii all my life, would you blame me for looking for an arrow and to fight for my rights? So the people in DRC have got those valid expectations. But the key success factor here is the fact that there will be no forum shopping. All of them will be under one roof. And President Kagame defined the problem very well and also defined the solution, that you require a political solution. A military solution is not going to help anybody. And in my view, you did ask earlier on a pertinent question. There are the leaders in this meeting coming with clean hands. They must come with clean hands, because as they go for this meeting, every single leader going for the meeting in Dar es Salaam understands each leader's interests. So when they go for the meeting in camera, then they'll have that eyeball-to-eyeball conversation, and they must come up with a solution. In my view, they should adopt the model of the election of a pope. They need to go to a place which is very discomfortable. Maybe they don't have the luxuries of a 5-star setting. They go in the room. In the election of a pope, they're not afforded a lot of luxuries, so that we see the white smoke in a hurry. Maybe that is what needs to happen in Dar es Salaam, so that we see the white smoke in a very short space of time.
I think you introduced the panel and you said it's an interesting panel. But let me just make it clear. It is unfortunate that I'm seated in this panel simply because it is a manel. In the world that we live in today, it is not right. This undiverse. I know there are challenges here and there, but it is 5 of us. It is a manel. As we speak right now, I'm leading 2 major projects on advancing gender equality in the media and the civil society. And let me just register my exception to being part of this panel. I am not going to dishonor the gentleman here by stepping out, but let me just say that probably this should be a wake-up call to the producers and the directors. It may not be easy to get a panel that is diverse, but at least it should be a priority in such conversation.
Professor, how are you making that uncomfortable?
I know I'm speaking to the audience, not really you.
Okay,
that's just a point I need to make.
I think people forget the boy child a lot. Yeah, there is this kind of attitude when we speak about gender. It is synonymous with women inclusion, to the extent that the boy has been forgotten. The boy is the one now dying at M23. The boy is the one who is dying in DRC Congo. Of course, women are displaced and many women have died, not to belittle that. But men and boys are the ones dying with depression. They're the ones dying of drug abuse. I believe also there should be affirmative action. There should be a balance of sorts, even for the inclusion of young men, because I keep meeting young people, young men who have enormous responsibilities on their back, but nobody really recognizes them. When they go to places of work, women are easily promoted because they are women, but nobody promotes a man because he's a man, because probably he is not beautiful, doesn't have nyash. So it's very important to remember that men must, and young boys must be given their position also. They must be remembered.
Okay.
I think for purposes of clarity, I don't talk about men or women, I talk about diversity.
The diversity.
Probably he might not be aware of this, that diversity is a clear and very critical indicator of quality of news content. But let me just bring it back to you, because you're the boss here.
I'll take a jump and say maybe there's people experiencing mental challenges.
Okay, so gentlemen, let's now focus.
Talk of diversity, then we should also be, now we should bring the woke agenda of saying, let's have heterosexual people and gay people.
No. I think let's not digress.
Yes. I'm talking about something that I'm knowledgeable about. Let us not allow people to speculate and cast aspersions here.
And maybe just, if this would make you feel better, husband, we had the sign language interpreter who was a lady, so.
I mean, as far as the will is concerned, that may not be sufficient, but I think that's the opportunity of making his points.
Absolutely.
So I guess we can make progress.
Let's now make progress and proceed. Kasmil, let's look at how the issues are progressing in terms of activism in this country. Do you think that what as young people set out for was achieved in as much as balancing the equation and ensuring that voices are heard? Was this how perhaps you had envisioned things would play out the way things are right now?
I don't know. I don't think so, that this is what I had envisioned, because when we were setting out, we set out with a very clear agenda. We got some results. They were dismal, but we got results nonetheless. And I think in growing in understanding, now I realized that just as the analyst Mokwa said, that I realized this is a political problem, just the way they're speaking about the conflict at the Congo. Then I decided to take a political route, because the political route seemed more sustainable. It seemed as though the conversation that the state was willing to have it within a political formation. That is the direction now I took. There are still very many strides that could be taken. There are very many advancements that could be made towards what we were agitating for. Of course, we had very great success with the rejection of the finance bill, but there are certain aspects which we did not do quite well. And that's why even in the political wing, as you might know, that I currently am championing for Kenyans' rights within the Orient Democratic Movement's Youth League. Part of what we're trying to do is drive a national dialogue that will ensure that even from a political front, we ensure that these issues that we were on the streets for are properly articulated. Because in such a sad state of affairs, if all we will do is sit and sloganeer and take the children of the working poor to the streets, have them get shot, drape a flag over their body, go and send their parents 10,000 and forget all about them. There are unnecessary deaths of young people. I don't believe that the issues we are fighting for deserve to have any bloodshed if we have the proper communication channels. And that's what we said. We will explore all of them. And you've seen us on the streets. We've been very active. Now we are trying this dialogue approach. And if the approach of dialogue does not work, the streets are always open for occupation.
Dismas. It's great now we have the mix of the young and as well as this age demographic as well. I didn't say that.
No, the Gen Zs and the millennials.
Yes, the Gen Zs and the millennials. And I want perhaps, as you look at the balancing act of how this idea came up of leaderless, and you can also chime in later, husband, the leaderless, the tribeless, but then Kasmil here has even fallen victim of being called a traitor. He's sought activism in a different level. He's actually in this very interesting orange color tonight. when you look
This is the party scarf.
Okay.
Yes.
Whereas we are not advocating for your party per se.
I personally am.
You are personally, but not as TV47. When you look at how young people have morphed in this country, are we in a situation, do we still seem confused, or are we heading in a direction that we know where we are going?
Well, at no stage would you say that a country doesn't know where it's going. It's that people are serving diverse and divergent interests.
Yes.
So, for instance, during the Gen Z demonstration, people had different views on what must be done to achieve their objectives. And after the issues were raised, very clear fundamental issues were raised, then President Ruto decided that he must respond to the issues. And he responded to a good number of the issues. One was rejection of the finance bill. Another one was firing the administration. In fact, what he did, he behaved what Ram Emanuel, a highly regarded politician in the US, would say, that you never let a crisis go to waste. You take advantage of the crisis. So there were fundamental reforms in Kenya, actually unprecedented all over the world, that the youth can organize themselves. They bring pertinent issues to the table, and the president is forced to sit back, reflect, and take action on those issues. And those issues, in a good part, have been addressed. But now, making progress, we must realize as a nation that the presidency is a symbol of national unity, and it must serve national and public interests. Now, one of the key lessons from Gen Z, the demonstrations, was that public participation can no longer be ceremonial, that it's something that you have to tick. Public participation actually means public participation, that the elected leaders, be it at the National Assembly, Senate, or even the County Assembly, they have to represent the interests and aspirations of the people who elected them into office. And I wish that the spirit of the Gen Z demonstrations is carried to the 2027 general elections, so that we get a very clear scorecard or a methodology of examining the leaders, whether or not they've performed. But unfortunately, or when you go to the real political space in Kenya, as we approach the 2027 general elections, Onyango will remember that he's a Luo man, and Kamau will remember that he's a Kikuyu man, and these people will go back to their tribal cocoons and vote because of their national interests. Now, national interest here is a synonym for tribal interests, and people will fall into those cocoons. Yes. That is the unfortunate bit. And then a few days later, they'll suffer from, in business they say buyer's remorse, but this time around it will be from voter's remorse. And that is the situation which is obtaining in the US today. There are people who voted for Donald Trump. He told them, we are going to work on the tariffs. And right now he said he's going to raise the tariffs, although I understand that he's had a conversation with Mexico. But you know, automatically when you raise tariffs, then it means the price of commodities goes up. Unfortunately, that is the situation which happens in most parts of the world, that you have one or two powerful leaders who come and shock everybody into dancing to the drum beats. And at that stage, voters become emotional and irrational. And I know Professor Will and I have had this argument for donkey years. But can you explain to any rational human being, after you are warned, that a number of people who had presented themselves for member of the National Assembly were drug dealers and drug lords, and some people went ahead and voted for them. They went to the National Assembly, and these are the leaders you expect to come up with stellar legislation. These are the leaders you expect to understand complex challenges facing the world and how we can address them right here in Kenya. So, for some reason, the typical voter all over the world, not just in Kenya, they no longer vote with their selfish interest in mind. They vote with the politicians' selfish interest in mind. That is why when, during the next election, one can easily bet that up to 80% of the current crop of elected leaders are not going back. I can even challenge you right now. If you can name for me 15 members of the National Assembly, if you can name for me 15 principal secretaries, or if you can name 10 cabinet secretaries, you may not have capacity to do that because they have not performed anything. But you remember long ago, maybe when you were a little kid, the likes of when you had people like George Anyona, when we had people like James Orengo or even Paul Mwite, when we studied history and civics, a student of average mind would name all members of the National Assembly because they performed something. But right now you go to the streets of Nairobi, if you bump into an MP you wouldn't even recognize because they don't have capacity nor competence. There are many, you can easily bump into a principal secretary and you don't even know that it's a principal secretary. Why? They don't come out shining. And that is something we must guard as we go to the general elections, that we must vote with our selfish interest in mind. If we don't vote with our selfish interest in mind, then we are inflicting pain in ourselves.
Yeah, husband, is this the activism and the outcome of it? Do you see hope as a millennial, as it were, in terms of how young people came up and took on the role of activism and fighting for their rights?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of hope. I see a lot of hope. I mean, whatever the Gen Z-led revolution did, has taken us to a totally new level as far as civil disobedience is concerned. The way they mobilized, the issues that they articulated, how they drove those issues until dark forces came into the whole thing and sort of, crashed it because it became a lot more political, people with vested interests infiltrated. And naturally what we had envisioned and what I essentially talked about, it will reach a point where they'll have to find leadership. And if they remain leaderless, then they'll be rudderless. And people like Caswell would find where there is leadership and they would find relevance in those spaces. But to a large extent, I must say that it has ushered in a new dispensation, a dispensation where young people have realized that they can no longer be told that you're leaders of tomorrow. They can actually take issues head on, address those issues. And my prayer is that all these issues that they raised, the rage that we saw in 2024 and it all started in 2023, can be harnessed constructively within structures that are democratic, so that we don't fall into anarchy. There are few individuals that you may want to pick out who have distinguished themselves. But I think we may want to run away from individuals and look at issues. To what extent did they drive issues? They drove issues and brought the president to a space where the president was speaking to issues in spaces where we've never seen a president. And, guys who are part of the establishment were quick to say that this is one of the best presidents. He has come down up to Twitter spaces. And the question was, this is probably one of the presidents who did something that demanded that he had to come and become accountable on this platform. But one interesting thing going forward is that we know tribalism and ethnic mobilization is still going to be a big thing in the coming election. But the Gen Z-led revolution has given people a sense, to understand that if the establishment does not serve your interests, you can actually activate Article 1 of the Constitution, for self-determination.
Yes.
And the president keeps saying that the 2027 election is likely to be the easiest election. Most of his lieutenants keep talking about that he doesn't see a challenge. And for me, what happened last year, and the way this rage has been distributed, you have guys who've gone into mainstream political parties, you have guys who are outside there just doing civil engagements in matatus, using graffitis, and then you have Kebaso Morara here who is doing an amazing work. All this may not collectively end up giving us one individual as a Gen Z leader, but they will sensitize people so much so that anyone who will be coming to look for votes, either at the constituency level, gubernatorial, senatorial, or even at the presidency, will find it difficult to mobilize people along ethnicity, along religion. They will have to start addressing issues. Because the issues of Gen Zs in Suna East and Migori County, where I come from, are the same issues of Gen Zs in Karatina and Nyeri County, where other Gen Zs are. And what people forget is that, Gen Zs probably had this disenchantment with this regime, and they were sort of disillusioned simply because they expected so much. Now, they get into the job market and they realize that because of the tax regime that we have, they can't take so much home. But there's another demographic called the millennials, the us guys. And we are thinking, as we've already established our careers, now we are looking for the next big deal. You want to finish your home. So a combination of these two groups, Gen Zs and the millennials, will be so disillusioned with this regime by the time that it is done, that it won't matter whether I'm Luo, Kikuyu, Kuria, or Kisi. Anyone who is not addressing the issues on my payslip, anyone who is not addressing the issues of the cost of living, anyone who is not addressing the issues of the housing levy that I'm paying, yet I'm struggling to finish my mortgage, will not get my vote. Whether they are the sitting president or an aspiring president, they will have to address issues. And therefore, if for me, if there is any regime that is going to say bye to tribalism and say bye to it completely, it is this regime. If they continue like this, they are pushing Kenyans to a situation where we will not vote along tribal lines.
Okay.
We'll vote along issues.
I'll come to the gentleman. Let me, the younger demographic here, but let me just read some feedback. I'm saying, hello, George, keenly following on how the strong team led by Dismas Mokua analyzes the real issues. Tuned in from Gongoni in Kilifi County, that is Benson Thuva Garama. This one is phone number from the United States. I'm watching from Arlington, Pennsylvania. Nice discussion. Thank you, sir. Our WhatsApp number is on your screen. There is some feedback that concerns you, gentlemen. Let me read it for you because it is coined with what I was about to ask you. Some on YouTube, Wanja Douglas says Morara for president, and John Ogalo says John Lastborn from Siaya. For sure, don't trust this Casmel. When talking, you may think he's a straightforward person. Kumbe ni mjanja. And Wanja Douglas says, Casmel ni msaliti. Brian Gibruto, Casmel is just a desperate opportunist. Never take him seriously. Do you feel, and I remember I asked you that question last time, do you feel that perhaps you betrayed this movement, that they saw a new phase, and we've had what Dismas and husband have talked about, taking the matters and exercising Article 1. But do you think that your approach was not very conducive to some quarters?
You know, I've said time without number that a revolution is not a popularity contest.
Yes.
I do not care for ratings. I do not care for whether this person likes me or not. If we have good governance, if we have a war on graft, if we have accountability in government, I will go back to whatever cocoon I came from. Because remember, nobody gave me a letter and told me now we are deploying you to the streets. And nobody should think that they have the right to deploy me from the streets. Again, I say, like I've said before, I've never hidden any of my moves. I said that now I realize that people are taking a political angle. There were people who are actually coming into the movement thinking that they would be the thought and opinion shapers. And in a leaderless movement, if we were to just paint a picture of what our movement was, when we said we are leaderless, we claimed that the leaders who have been in power do not speak for the common interest of the Mwananchi. That is why we do not want to claim their leadership. When we said we were tribeless, we did not mean that we do not acknowledge what our tribes are, because it will get to a point where for our country to have the collective healing, we will have to sit down and unpack what this monster of tribalism is. I come from several collectives, but one of the collectives that I come from is the Luo community. And you can see the people who are in leadership from the Luo community have felt disenfranchised for over 60 years. And now, for them, it feels, for that community, it feels as though they have consistently been relegated to the opposition. That, until we can heal what that thing is, we can no longer hide from that tribelessness. So when we said we were tribeless, we were saying that for far too long, tribes have been used to divide us. And we are claiming that for this particular cause, we will not allow ourselves to be divided alongside tribes. When we went to the streets on the 25th of June, which was the culmination, when the people took back the power which had been donated to legislators, we said we were partyless, because the parties then did not seem to fight for the interests of the people. Therefore, I keep on asking people that you cannot look at me and faithfully or honestly claim that if I was not your leader, I have betrayed you. Because I also have the democratic right to pursue other methods. What I had promised myself after seeing the things that I saw, because remember, I was in the front line. And I saw things. I saw people make money off of the protests. I saw some of these people who were yapping. There's a lady who was insulting me on some television station. She stole money meant for mobilization and lied that she was going to bring 100 youths to the streets. And she did not. After seeing the skullduggery that was happening in this movement, I said, I want to be in a place where my work will not just only be leading the children of the working poor to the streets to get shot at without any sustainable change. So the only people I betrayed are tribalists. The only people I betrayed are the people who felt like they would have used me for media interviews and now they can no longer use me. And the people I joined hands with, because I made a very calculated opinion. I analyzed and said, I am moving into a space of political activism. And people have done it differently. People like Morara have formed a party. At its formation and its inception, to be fair, we were on different sides of the divide. It was a time issue, whatever it was. But of the existing parties in our democracy,
yes,
the Orange Democratic Movement is the one that promised the most change.
Okay.
And I keep on saying, if I am as insignificant, why do the people still keep on, I don't know how many months later, bashing me?
Kabasa, I know you want to really respond, but I wanted to hold it because we really have to take a break. I've been angled and asked to take this break. But as you come back, I want you to answer to this comment from our viewers. Please start with your name, where you're watching us from as well. Activism is great and it has always helped in shaping the politics in this country. The problem that destroyed the Gen Z is hunger, into brackets, njaa, self-interest, dishonesty, and self-centrism. The day they'll be honestly like the Matiba group in 1992, then a lot can be achieved. Simmer on that and then come respond and tell us whether you think you will be achieving what Kenyans and your perspectives as well wish to achieve. When we come back from this commercial break, we have still more on the other side. Please do stay with us and keep your feedback coming.
Are you ready to elevate your business game?
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
Kama wewe ni mfanyabiashara, huwezi kaa bure, unajipanga taratibu vile inavyofaa.
Join us each week as we dive into the stories of the world's most driven entrepreneurs.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
The Grind, where business meets brilliance. Tune in every Monday at 7:30 p.m. because your business deserves the best.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in? I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora.
Welcome back. You're watching the Daily Report, State of the Nation, with my guest, the gentleman here in studio, Tiu Kebaso.
Yes.
And as you respond to this question by this viewer who is asking about activism, do you think that perhaps you're getting molded into the older, boomers type of activism, that then the new age or new life, or how the fresh blood that perhaps people would expect to see, that Kasmel was speaking to earlier, the expectation is not as had been expected?
Yeah, my biggest worry is that we were trying to do systemic change. Because my position on this particular matter has always been that changing the leaders in themselves is not a solution to the problem. This is more of a systemic problem. And I even tweeted about it and asked, should we be removing President William Ruto alone, or should we be removing the system that makes people like President William Ruto president? Because at the end of the day, if we do not accept that this is a systemic problem, we are not going to solve it. So I do believe that our activism has played a huge role in terms of bringing civic education closer to people, and them having a better understanding of how their government is run and what they should expect from government. But I don't believe that our activism has had any impact on the political leadership of our country. I don't think that our president, now because of our activism, is now speaking more truth than lies, or that he has now better managed the economy, or that extrajudicial killing and abduction has stopped because of the Gen Z activism, or that theft and wastage of public funds has stopped because of the Gen Z activism. So in terms of political change and in terms of governance change, nothing has happened. Things are still the same. Most of what they say in public and commit in public just ends there. It really never gets done, because even the president committed himself that abductions, Mambo abductions, itaisha, and just recently bodies were retrieved from city mortuaries of people who disappeared on the 17th of December and that now have been found dead. So in my thinking, there are two parts to this story: the government story and the people's story. On government, nothing has changed. The leaders are still behaving the same way. But on the part of the people, I'd like to agree with Dismas that the people have become more exposed, more aware, and that we are going to see a change in terms of how they make their decisions. What probably I like to say is, the Gen Zs, me being one of them, I want to encourage them not to be just voters, but to also offer themselves for leadership. Because, sometimes you complain so much, but you're not offering yourself to be a solution to the problem. So, you see what Morara is doing wrong. But are you able to step up and step in and say that I'm going to take up this space and I'm going to participate in leadership?
Okay.
And one of the biggest barriers towards young people participating in politics is about the cost of doing politics in Kenya. Politics is very, very expensive. It is extremely expensive. If I tell you how much I've spent just from September to date on politics, it's about...
Are you doing politics or activism?
It's political activism. So I don't see the difference.
How much you are at the figures?
You see, activism is seeking change. Politics is just a science of influence. You're just influencing people. But when you are a political activist, you are influencing people towards social political change. It has costed more than 13 million.
Really?
Yes, that's what Inject Party has spent just since September to now. Now, how many young people can afford that or have that kind of money? I will tell you that it is 1% of the population. Most of the young people don't have jobs. They don't have businesses. They can't even be given loans in banks. So if you look at the expense of becoming a politician or of taking leadership or becoming a member of parliament or a senator, even if you don't dish out money to people, just traveling and logistics, the millions is something that young people do not have. So if they don't step up and step in and start changing the story of campaign financing in our politics, they are never going to have a chance. They will be complainers. Then after complaining, they vote for the same people they've been complaining about.
Let me take it to Hesbon and then to Dismas. You seem to disagree.
I totally disagree. I mean, that's not the direction to take Kenyans, to make Kenyans believe that you have to have 13 million in a span of 3 months for you to play politics. Politics is simply about allocation and distribution of resources. So anyone who elects an MCA is in politics. And the question that we should be asking ourselves, do they know the reason why they're giving that MCA the power? They're giving that MCA the power to legislate at the local level, to oversight the distribution and allocation of resources by the governor, and basically to represent, the people. But let me tell you, the problem that we have today, it might be governance, it might be anything. But the root cause of the problem is that we want to operate in silos and say, I spent 13 million, I'm doing an amazing stuff. People have to amass resources for them to do what I'm doing. It is deceiving Kenyans. In the run-up to the first multi-party elections in this country, and the reason why we keep talking about Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Masinde Muliro, and Kenneth Matiba is very simple. They were surrounded by young people, young, brilliant, energetic, much more brilliant than the generation that we have today. Now, these young Turks addressed issues. The issue that Caswell is addressing are the same issues that Moraro is addressing, are the same issues that Dismas is talking about. Same issues. What is the difference? The generation that we have today, they want to go into different directions. What happened during Matiba, Masinde Muliro, and Jaramogi Oginga Odinga's days? They had Ford before it had those splinters of Ford Kenya and Ford Asili.
Yeah.
The likes of Paul Mwiche, Gitobwi Manyara, James Orengo, Professor Nyang' Nyong'o, they came together, they were young, and they knew they were dealing with a generation that was wise because that generation had seen the transition from colonialism to independence, and they knew where they were taking this country. And Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was on record. I mean, people were around Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, the likes of Dr. Mukisa Kitui, were on record that the thing that distinguished Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was the young people who were around him, who distinguished themselves by articulating issues and helping these leaders who are at the twilight of their lives, focus on nothing but issues. Most of the young generation that we have today, you tell them that Ford Kenya was the official opposition leader after the 1992 general election. They won't believe. It is the same Ford Kenya that we have today. But who were the luminaries in Ford Kenya? They were not just from one political region. They were not just from one tribe. They were individuals who were not as resourced as the MPs that we have today, but they were individuals who were brought together by ideology. Okay. Let me give you an example. Okay. After the 1992 general election, there was a by-election in Mombasa. I think it was in Kisauni. There was another by-election in Migori constituency where I come from. Migori has since produced 4 constituencies: Suna East, West, Uriri, and I think Awendo. Now, the person who won in Migori defected to Kanu immediately. He won on a Ford Kenya ticket. And then Professor Rashid Mzee won in I think it's in Kisauni or Mvita, I can't quite remember. Won, and the late Karisa Maitha challenged that. Now, if you go back to history and look at the people who went down to Migori, where I grew up, and Mombasa, to campaign, to ensure that the guys who were influenced to jump back to Kanu were defeated, there were people from all over this country. They went there because there was a cause. They needed ideologically reformist individuals in parliament. That is what we are lacking. That when you ask the majority of people, do they have the thinking of the Mukisa Kituis of this world, who forced President Moi, of Gitobwi Manyara, who forced President Moi to repeal Section 2A of the Constitution? They don't. And the reason why they don't is everyone is looking for an opportunity to create their own path.
Allow me to jump in.
What we need is an opportunity to create a common pathway that will address the plight of every Kenyan, irrespective of where they are. And no one has to tell us that they're doing it more than any other person, or they're spending more. If you can, they need to tell us what are the issues that they're addressing and how those issues unite all Kenyans, irrespective of where they are.
Let this come, then now you'll respond to
Maringa, no. I think it's important to maintain some level of decency and discipline. The reason why elections in Kenya are very expensive is not because elections are designed to be expensive, is that a majority of the people who run for political office have got challenges presenting ideas to the people. If you present ideas in a solid manner, Because politics, by definition, is selling ideas to influence the voters to vote in a particular direction. Now, if you've got a capacity to present ideas in the political marketplace and persuade people, voters will actually give you money. During the last election, we saw a governor, I think, in Bomet or Kericho. People did a fundraiser. They actually gave him resources. And recall in the US at some stage when Barack Obama was campaigning, because then he didn't have much resources. Even at some stage, his credit card was rejected. But people said, hey, this is a good man. He can become president. And they gave him resources for campaign. Obviously, you need bare minimum resources for logistics. But look at the typical Kenyan politician. They want to be flamboyant. They're the ones who are using choppers, jumping from one point to another, using choppers, using top-of-the-range vehicles. You'll find a politician has got a motorcade of 10 vehicles, top-of-the-range vehicles, gas guzzlers. Obviously, it will be expensive. Now, because majority of these politicians have no intellectual capacity, they cannot present ideas. Instead of attracting people to come to their rallies, they now give them standing allowances. People are paid to come and stand. People have to be, I think in your village, there's a language they use that after Gonya, you know. So when you're a politician, you don't even understand your political party manifesto. After your party leaders launched it, you don't understand the contents of the manifesto. But when you go to a rally, you just tell 1,000 people, make a line, I give you 1,000 bob. Not long ago, you saw a senator, I think from Western Kenya, Kisumu, giving people resources, giving people money, literally giving people money.
And they had queued.
And they had queued.
Yeah.
At the end of the year,
yes,
which is a sad reality, you find politicians who go do shopping. They invite people to their shopping centers and give them bags with unga, with cooking flour. Now, that is the reason why politics is expensive. Because, and as Professor Wheeler has indicated, we've had politicians in Kenya who've been elected on peanuts. I can give examples. Dr. Z. T. Onyonka, from where I come from, he was not a millionaire, he was not a billionaire. He got elected. His son, Richard Onyonka, got elected when he was campaigning. He didn't have much resources. There's a gentleman called George Anyona. I mean, Lawrence Sagini. Fortunately, the examples I know from my constituency. But if you come to the political space and you want to use the status quo,
yes,
you'll end up selling your grandfather's chicken for the campaigns. But if you come and you present noble ideas that people can identify with, they'll flood you with resources, you'll be surprised.
Okay, let's
probably I must have been misunderstood by both of the gentlemen to my far left. What I meant to say is not that resources is the only key towards political mobilization or political success in political office. What I meant to say is this. Dismas has said that most of our politicians are dumb, and because they are dumb, they are unable to present ideas, but because they have money, they give people money in exchange for not giving them ideas. That is inaccurate. It's not true. Most of the people that we have in parliament are actually very brilliant. Some of them have PhDs, others have masters. Our lying president has a PhD. Okay? So the former CS for Treasury, Henry Rotich, is a Harvard alumni. So the politicians that we are dealing with are not dumb. Some of them have gone to Ivy League schools. They are not incapable of presenting ideas. It's not that they are not eloquent. What we are dealing with is a systemic problem where the citizenry does not want ideas intentionally. If you go to the ground, and you know, I'm speaking as somebody who just doesn't come to TV. I go to the ground every single week. Before you talk to people, they want you to buy them this, wekea sisi, mafuta ya pikipiki. You go to a church, you've just come to worship, a fundraiser suddenly happens. There was no fundraiser, but suddenly there's one. Tunahitaji bags 5 za simiti, tunahitaji mabati 10. Until this reality changes, believe you me, it will be very, very difficult for a young person to be in leadership in this country, to occupy a position of leadership.
Okay.
And until we accept what this man has correctly pointed out, the example of Obama, where the governor for Kericho, where we can actually fundraise for candidates. then we are not going to get anywhere until we solve campaign financing. We need to start asking ourselves a question. What is this thing that makes a person spend 300 million to campaign for governor, yet the salary is 1.5 million, and if you calculate the salary for the next 5 years, it's only going to amount to 120 million. So what is making this person spend 300 million? Which love is this that this person has for his constituents?
Okay.
You've seen when we had vetting of cabinet secretaries in parliament, the CSS President William Ruto was appointing to cabinet, and you saw them declare their wealth. What is this that makes this person worth 3, 4, 5 billion want to go and get a job worth 1 million shillings? Because even if he takes just 2 billion shillings and puts it in a fixed deposit account, it will give him more than what he wants to go and seek as a salary of cabinet secretary.
Okay.
And it boils down to this. People steal money for campaigns. Members of parliament are busy stealing CDF funds for the next campaigns. Governors are stealing money for the next campaigns. The president is stealing enough money for the next campaigns. So until we solve this problem of money, first, how do we mobilize our politics? Is it on the basis of money? Are we, when politicians come to us, what expectations do we have on them? Who do we give the microphone? A young person who just walked in may not be given the microphone, but one who came driving a Range Rover, watasema wacha huyo mheshimiwa aseme kitu tusikie vile.
Might you have bowed down to this pressure?
So this is not bowing down to pressure. We are being practical now. We are moving from, because political analysts are very theoretical. And we are the politicians doing the politics on the ground. So we are practical.
Did you bow down to the pressure?
There is a very big difference between his thesis or his dissertation or his research paper and what is actually happening on the ground, the practicality of the matter. The practicality of the matter is that now we have to find a way to fundraise, not to fundraise for purposes of bribing the electorate, but even for logistics, for moving around, to give young leaders access. Right now, I'm in the process of registering a political party. How many young people can do it? One of the requirements is to open offices in more than 20 counties in the Republic of Kenya. That is money. Very serious money that you cannot just raise. Okay?
Yeah.
So
yeah, Kasimel, did this your party that you joined also went ahead, as you chime in as well, also went ahead to join government in an interesting way, and that has been debated. Do you think that, for instance, issues like the AUC that is coming up, the election that is coming up, and the formation of IEBC were issues that ought to have taken more precedence than what seems to be being presented to Kenyans right now?
First, the Orange Democratic Movement is not in coalition with the current government. And we are happy to be empaneled in a station that understands nuance. And of course, top brass were drawn into cabinet. And that is something I cannot speak to because I speak for a very specific demographic. Yes. When I joined this party, I did not necessarily go to meddle with mainstream affairs. We believe that even as Mwalimu Nyerere said about the Tanzanians, kama Watanzania watapata mabadiliko katika chama chetu cha mapinduzi, wataenda kutafuta hayo mabadiliko kwengine. Sasa, as I'm saying is, I think it is very possible for our youth league to drive this party to capture power in 2027. This youth league of the Orange Democratic Movement does not exist in isolation because it is a national party. It is the largest pro-people party, best organized, even the basic standards of a party. If you think about issues about the AUC chairmanship, which I know very well my party leader is going to clinch because he has done a very robust campaign and he has shown what it takes if you want to vie for these things. He has put in the hard work and I believe that he has the networks and the human capital that's needed for him to clinch the seat. I'm a firm believer that he's going to clinch that seat.
Okay.
On matters, just to take it back on the issue we were talking about, I'd like to respectfully disagree with the party leader of the Inject Party. I do not necessarily think that our biggest problem is around campaign financing. It is a valid concern that cannot be disputed. And I'm very happy that as a young person, he has decided to challenge the status quo specifically along that. Other young people could pick certain issues as we believe, and if we run away, if he runs away with campaign financing, I run away with mobilizing change in the ODM's Youth League, and everyone does their part. But the thing, for example, in reflection, the thing that made June 25th such a huge success is we were unified around a particular issue. And unfortunately, at the risk of being controversial, the country believed that that was an ideology.
Okay.
Such that after the bill was dropped, we had this momentum that we did not know what to do with it. Then you find influencers and commercial activists who just want to drive public rage. And you know, it has a very, very specific outfit where go, have an eccentric personality like mine. I am not an exception. And chant a few slogans, go to the protest, spend 1 or 2 days in jail, and come out. It is a well-oiled machine. It is not like the times when people used to be detained for the ideals they believed in. People used to go to jail and say, for example, and this is why I would have a problem when I hear a certain snake oil salesman saying that he wants to okoa payslip. When my party leader was fighting against the cost of living, and he said that him and his father, the Right Honorable Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, have been disturbing the country for 60 years. The Honorable Jaramogi had a solid ideology. We could point and say, these were socialists. But if you think about our movement, and this is the point I would like us to be pragmatic and say, we do not have a grounding ideology. We know the issues we want to tackle. We know that we do not want corruption, we do not want bad governance, we want accountability in governance, and we want systemic change. However, that is not grounding enough because, and I saw this in NAC because I was a baby. When people were saying yote yawezekana bila Moi, it was not business as usual. My party leader, when he was campaigning he was selling a candidate who was indisposed. But the whole country rallied around this idea that we felt its time had come. And as a wake-up call, youth is not enough of an ideology. Because even all these panelists, they've been young before. And the names they're mentioning are firebrands that have been erased from our history through structure.
Yes.
And I'm in this disagreement, if I say I disagree with the Inject Party leader, I think for me, gone are the days when I would want to get clickbait. I think it is very important for us to sharpen contradictions and find sustainable ways, because it would be very sad for me to see a fellow young man lose 13 million and then fall into the hands of, for example, a rogue police officer or a corrupt somebody somewhere who wants to do a witch hunt on him, while that money he would have used to empower fellow youth that would have been used to. So for me, this is not a disagreement for clicks. It's a sharpening of contradictions and saying, this is what I think you believe in. This is what I believe in from this other side. How can we ensure that with the influence that we have amassed, we drive the conversation into a solid ideology that will change the systems in our country.
Let's drive the conversation to a home stretch because we need to start winding up, and I'll begin with you, and you'll combine that, the matters you see with your closing remarks that we come this way as well. Yes, I saw you wanted to respond. No, we will now come to you.
I just want to clarify. I did not say politicians are dumb. Those are Kebazo's words. In fact, politicians are some of the sharpest human beings alive. Can you imagine convincing a rational human being to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning while it's raining, and then they go queue for 10 hours, queue for hours on end to vote for you, knowing
and protect
very well,
the vote.
Yeah, knowing very well that this gentleman is not going to serve your selfish interests. The point I made, and I want to clarify, you may be Harvard educated, you could be Yale, you could be Oxford, like Owila, you could be DStv, but the majority of the politicians have got challenges presenting ideas. They've got challenges selling ideas to the voters. Now, because they have challenges selling ideas to the voters, they instead give them allowances. And poor Mura, poor Wanjiko falls victim to the allowances. And we keep on saying times above number that the typical politician suffers, the typical voter suffers from the Stockholm syndrome. They've fallen in love with their captors. They know very well this man I'm voting for has been certified by the Kenyan authorities as a thief. There is evidence from the judiciary that is a thief, but they go ahead and vote for that kind of person, and then you expect miracles. Now, talking about Mr. Raila Odinga, Raila Odinga has demonstrated without any doubt in anybody's mind that he's got capacity and competence to lead AUC. He's demonstrated. But there's this funny, amorphous, almost illogical kind of conclusion. People saying, wait a minute. Now, the conflict in DRC is going to compromise his capacity.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, the Luanda process, led by President Laurencio, started long before Mr. Raila Odinga declared his candidature. The Nairobi process started long before Mr. Raila declared his candidature. So when you have this manufactured Kenyan conversation by cartels and special interest groups claiming that because now President Felix Tshisekedi is working on broken eggshells, that it's going to compromise the votes, then you begin, the people who are making those suggestions, they assume that the people who are going to vote for Mr. Raila Odinga are stupid, that they have no capacity to understand these issues, that they come from Mosocho. I mean, Kenya as a country, we become very funny. We take petty tribal politics from Mosocho, from Kisumu, from Nyaligunga, and we want to export that petty politics to Addis Ababa. He is one of our own, a Kenyan, who has expressed interest in this very serious job. Instead of all of us supporting him, we are saying, wait a minute, the Djibouti candidate is solid. That there is no democracy in Kenya. Have you ever heard of an election in Djibouti?
Yeah.
And the winner gets... so in my view, you know, when President Ruto took office, he said one of the things he's going to do is promote Kenya as an FDI destination, catalyze our exports, and create opportunities for Kenyans' human capital. And it appears that Raila Odinga is one of the biggest beneficiaries, that as a Kenyan.
Yes.
And in my view, as I make my concluding remarks,
yes, please.
If it's possible that we can get as many people out of Kenya. We have said this times above number. It's because of that we got Barack Obama. So for these men on my right who are very ambitious, let them go to Canada, let them go to China, let them go everywhere and not come back to Kenya. So that at some stage when you're having a G20 meeting, the president of World Bank has got Kenyan DNA, the Prime Minister of UK has got Kenyan DNA, the president of the US has got Kenyan DNA, and that is how we make progress. This idea that, you know, there's a saying in my village that if you don't walk around, you think your mom is the best cook. But when you go to your neighbor, you discover that a GMO and rich is actually better than from your home. So we must go out and conquer the world.
Yes, husband.
Yes, I think he's referring to Chiemo and Ret in reference to Matoke. So, in case you'd think it's Matoke, but if you move a bit, you realize it's Ret.
Yes.
But let me start with Raila. You know, history is very important. And, you know, the power of your story is also very critical. And the way in which we tell our stories, whether in this age of, you know, a disrupted digital platform or in the past, was by doing the right thing. It is the right thing that then makes your story. And when it is in the past, it is history. So when you look at history and the history of Raila Odinga and what he has done over the years, there is no doubt in my mind that it doesn't matter what Kenyans on social media want to think. It doesn't matter what they say about who is going to win. But the history of what Raila has done, which was presented to the whole world during the Mjadala Africa, it was a gulf between him and the competitor. You could tell that this is a gentleman who understands issues of Africa. And when you dig back and find out what has he done in the past, you find his story told either by what he has done or by people he has impacted. And I think a number of people have also talked about age as a factor. But look at the crisis in Africa today. If you're talking about silencing the guns, you know, the other day there's a professor that I respect who was talking about a 40-year-old, you know, 80-year-old job. What he doesn't know is that for these African heads of state who are going to work with the chair of PUC, they need someone who has the wisdom, someone who has seen it all, someone who is fairly elderly and can see beyond what they can see.
Okay.
And you see, that gives Raila an edge. That edge that people think is an advantage is actually an edge. But finally, let me just say that if you look at the voting patterns and what would happen after the East African, you know, time as the head of AUC, it tells you the voting pattern is likely to favor Raila because the direction towards the next region that is likely to take over power seems to be closer if they go with Raila.
All right.
Lastly, let me respond because there are a few things that were said here. One,
briefly.
Yeah, briefly.
Yes.
One is the politics that you're talking about, that people have to steal for them to win elections. And therefore, people want to amass enough wealth so that they compete these people, which for me is a very, a very interesting way of looking at it. The most practical way for me would be, what is so difficult in going to the electorate and letting the electorate know that, do you know what? If someone is stealing, he is stealing because the people you elected are not doing their work. And start by helping them understand that this is what the governor is supposed to do. This is what the MP is supposed to do. This is what the senator is supposed to do. This is what your local MCA is supposed to do. Today, we live in a country where a constituency that gets the least amount of CDF money gets around 157 million. When people say that MPs steal CDF, it is because they've not socialized with the National Government CDF Act.
Okay.
If conversations went through that direction, I think the likes of Morara can help people understand. Okay. Finally, maybe, because he threw some shades to us, we've been here. In 2007, I was a university student. We had a political party. And I may want to ask him, socialize with a few people who've been there. KJ was there with Vijana Tugutuke. They did their part. Anthony Kibagendi, the current MP for Kitutu Chache, was a party leader as a university student. He is currently a member of parliament. Probably those will offer serious mentorship to sharpen the skills that we have in...
Kasmel and then Kebatso.
Is the music?
Yes. Just go ahead.
Okay. Yes. I think, in closing, I would like to warn especially the legislators in the Orange Democratic Movement who have decided to depart from the party ideals and have consistently ridden on the coattails of our party leader to try and derail people from the real Kenyan agenda. First of all, we know that once Baba settles in Addis, ya Baba, we want to tell you that we wish you the best. If you decide to stay in Addis, stay in Addis. But in the event that these people who have consistently thought that we would ride on your coattails, and these few hecklers and jokers that I see around trying to think that they will rally Kenyans, we ask you to come back and be our official pallbearer to help us capture power in 2027. But we are saying, as the people of the Youth League of the ODM, we shall canvass the entire country, trying to unify fellow youth and ensure that in this coming election, we shall be where the decisions are being made. We shall not be on the menu, but we shall be part of the people who are determining the direction of this country by being grounded in ideology and being grounded in the national agenda with the backing and the foundation of the constitution of our country.
Kebaso, you get the last word.
Yeah, so... very interesting conversations. I've said my bit. I've learned something by listening to others. Probably what I can say is things they are more difficult than theoretical. Kenyans need to get to a point where they understand that this is not just a leadership problem. That by removing William Ruto and putting Gachagua, or removing William Ruto and putting Raila Odinga, you've not solved the Kenyan problem. It's much bigger than that. And it has been tried before and people have failed, because when we had a problem in Nairobi with Honorable Evans Kidero, people tried replacing him with Sonko, they saw the results. When we had a problem in Kiambu with Kabogo, people tried replacing him with Waititu, they saw the results with that. Probably we need to ask ourselves, which political system is this we've created where Anne Waiguru can steal from NYS and become a governor, where Gladys Bosholei can steal from the judiciary and become a woman who was in Kishu County? We need to ask ourselves, which system is this we've created where Pavel Oimeke can have a corruption case at EPRA and becomes an MP? We need to ask ourselves, which system is this that we've created?
Drop the names.
No, I own them. I can be sued for these. These are my views, not of TV47.
Oh, okay.
We need to ask ourselves,
wind up. Yeah.
Which system is this that we've created where Daniel Manduku has a corruption case in Kenya Ports Authority and we elect him as an MP?
Kibaso.
We need to ask ourselves, how do these people end up in leadership?
Yes.
Because as long as we are willing to vote for the lesser devil or the one who stole less to replace the one who stole more, we will always end up with bad leaders. We need systemic change and complete change.
Let me run through some feedback here. Morara is simply trying to lock out people from vying from political positions by scaring young ticks, by exaggerating expenditure on unknown campaigns. That is Wesley Wallace. Morara is simply trying to validate he's the right person to vie for presidential seat because he has spent more. Robert Nyaga saying, I agree with Dismas ideology and development do not require bribes from politicians alone. We have seen past political changes where money in form of bribes to Kenyans never existed. Morara should fight the malady of buying voters. It's actually illegal. Show you call it Mama Kehania from Machakos Mjini. Thank you, Mama Kehania. Why register a political party? I mean, one can run independently in our able constitution. Again, I say we lack honesty, ninja too, and seeing opportunity and losing focus. Morara Kebaso is right. He paints a clear reality. The days of Anyona, Saginis, and Matibas are gone. We need to move away from those olden days. We should keep praying for Morara Kebaso. Jamigori needs to wake up and smell the coffee. Some feedback from Mao. Whether you like it or not, politics is expensive in Kenya, either ukiwa na content, poor or bad. I salute you, Morara Kebaso. Proud of you. On YouTube, Brian Kipruto. Bravo, Morara Kebaso, you're a true hero of this revolution. History will judge you well. Keep it up with the exposure. All the Gen Zs are behind you. Even the ruling class know that you are unable to move. That is just part of your feedback. We thank you for tremendously contributing to the program tonight. That's all we had time for. And we thank you also for accompanying us even as we took some more time, but the conversation was greater than the time we had. Dismas Mukua, Dr. Hesbon Owila, Kasmal Makaure, and Morara Kebaso. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us as well. My name is George Maringa. Good night from Nairobi. I'll see you next time.